Hello everybody, Crow here, and this is I guess kind of like a pickup slash demonstration video. I did get my Retron 5 in the mail. Long story short, I was interested in the Retron 5 for quite some time. I started hearing about it like 2 years ago, and maybe around 2 years ago, maybe a year ago. I don't quite remember, but I thought about it, and the reason I wanted the Retron 5 was it was a way for me to play my existing video game collection, my Nintendo, Famicom, Super Nintendo, Genesis, Game Boy games, just have it hooked up to my HD TV, and be able to play the games on the HD TV and have it look good. And if you hear a little bit of background noise, that's the air conditioner. I apologize for that, but it does need to be on, trust me. Anyway, so yeah, I just wanted to be able to play those. I thought it was a neat concept to be able to play those games on an HD TV and have it look good without having it look like crap. Because if you do use composite or component video on like a 60-inch high definition TV, I have a plasma. It doesn't look that great. It really doesn't. It really looks better on a CRT TV. But do I really want to keep going to a CRT TV every time I want to play those games? And I thought this was a good substitution for that. Even though it does technically run on emulation, it's not actually running off the cartridge. So yeah, I pre-ordered it off of Amazon in January. Actually, on January 31st is when I pre-ordered it. $99.99 free shipping, because there was so much hype around it, and there was no release date. I had a feeling that they might be hard to find. That's the real reason I pre-ordered it. And I figured, you know what, if I decide I don't really want it, I'll just cancel it. Well, a couple months later, the price the price rose to $139.99, and at that point, I was like, okay, I'm just going to keep my pre-order because Amazon will order my pre-order price of $99.99. What's funny is that I know some people online, well, actually one person online on Facebook, that pre-ordered it way back in September, and Amazon had the listed price of $79.99. So they actually got theirs like a month ago for $79.99. However, stock started running low, I guess, and Amazon realized what was going on. And maybe a month after I put in my pre-order, they stopped taking pre-orders altogether. And that's why that's really one of the reasons I held on to my pre-order. So I waited around, and since I knew I was going to get it, I purposely didn't watch any reviews or anything on the Retron 5, at least until I would get it, because I kind of wanted that experience for myself, plugging in, seeing it for myself without having any input from anybody else. And then about a day or two after I played with it, I started going back and watching the reviews. I watched Gamester81, Pat the NES Punk, CJR, somebody else. Why can't I think of who it was now? There was one thing in common with all those reviews I watched, and that was that they reviewed the system right when they got it. Like, they got their hands on it beginning of June and tested it and put out a video as soon as they could. The problem with that is, now that I have it, what I did was I tested a Genesis game, and then I went and I tested a Super Famicom game, and the Super Famicom game didn't work. And I was like, let me go and see if it needed to be updated. So I looked, and sure enough, they had put out 5 updates for this Retron 5 in the last 6 weeks. So all those updates, a lot of the issues I heard about are non-existent anymore. There are some other issues. I'll get into those. There are some things that don't work the way people expect them to work. And I have my own theories about that, and I'll kind of go through that too. But what I want to do now is I'm going to turn it on. And you know what I forgot to do? I need to capture. I want to capture as well using Hapog HD PVR. So I'm going to put some capture footage of what I'm doing on the screen as well. Alright, so I got my capture device going. The first thing I've heard complaints about is that you have to hold the power button in for so long. And I have to kind of agree with that. You do have to hold this power button in for quite a long time. While I'm holding it in, let me kind of quickly explain what this came with. This came with the Retron 5. You know what? Let me try this again. Sometimes if you hold it in maybe I didn't hold it long enough. There we go. Yeah, I don't know. Sometimes if I hold it in the corner, it doesn't seem like it's registering. So that may be a problem there. Yes, the design is very flimsy on the top. This, holy crap, you can see that bend. That is very weak right there. So we got it booting up. It came with the controller. It came with a micro USB to mini USB adapter to plug and charge this thing in the back. I think you can only charge it while it's on. Yeah, while it's on. Otherwise, it'll get no power. And Sister Moon brought up a point, and I have to agree with, and I think a couple others did too, as well, is why, and you have to have it plugged in to charge. I'm going to unplug this cable here, because the controller is fully charged. But why not have like kind of like a sensor in the bottom where you could just plug it in, drop it in there, and have it charge, much like a cradle charging system. Kind of, I don't really care. The controller itself, yeah, very. I don't like this controller that much. I don't like the clicking. It's you get to hear it kind of. And that's another thing I've noticed is that at first the sound effects don't come up right away, so that's kind of weird. Like I could be flipping through the menu and there's no sound, and all of a sudden the sound will kick in. I think that's kind of weird. I don't. Yeah, it's not bad to hold, but yeah, you're way better off with the original controllers, I think. But it's nice that they gave you this function. And there's some macro buttons here that you could program in. I'll get to that in a actually after I explain what else this came in. And it came with the power cord with like a universal adapter, so you could plug in whatever plug for whatever country you're in. And then it came with a pretty nice and thick HDMI cable. So yeah, that's what it came with. So I'm just kind of gonna run through some things here. I got a whole bunch of games here, and it'll trigger stuff off for me to mention some certain things. So first things first, let's go to settings. I'm sure you might have seen this before if you've seen some of the other videos. But yeah, you've got image filters. And what I've done is I've actually programmed this button to cycle through the filters so we can see some of that. I'm not going to do that for every game because I pretty much have set what I like. And I have this button right now set for the scan lines on and off. But after I show it on the first game, I'm going to turn this off because I like the scan lines on. The scan lines being on kind of makes it look less like emulation and more like I was playing it on a real CRT. I really like the scan line feature. That's a big plus for me. Apply scan lines at main menu. Oh, I could do that? I think it's fine without it, though. Aspect ratio, you could change. You could have it stretch out. Normal aspect ratio is what I like for display overscan. I don't know if you knew, but in a like when you play on a CRT, the overscan area, the game was programmed to expect the edges of the screen, not to be shown. So you can actually blow up the picture, so it does the same thing. But I'm going to leave that off. I'd like to see the whole image. For its original resolution, and I'll make the game slightly smaller depending on what system it is for. I leave it off just so it fills up the screen. Refresh rate, you could. That's for really PAL and NTSC. Screen size, I have it at maximum because I don't really have the overscan issue. I'm sure you can see that on the... It looks the same on my capture device than it does on the TV, actually. Sound enhancement, I didn't know, but on default it was set to on. It kind of enhances the sound a little bit. I've turned it off. It doesn't... It actually didn't really notice it until I turned it off. But I'm going to leave it off just so I could hear the original sound without any enhanced echoing effects or whatnot. It could turn these dings off or on. I leave them on just because. Manage Retron 5 controller. This lets you program the left shortcut, the right shortcut. I leave it at 30 minutes because 5 minutes I find that this thing... Because if I don't use this controller and I want to go back to the home menu... on the other controllers, it's defaulted to, I think it's like start and down, and it'll bring you to a menu. Or you could just hit the home button here. And you could use any controller you have plugged in at any time. So sometimes I just like to reach over and hit home, or if I want to use the macro buttons. But if this controller is turned off in 5 minutes because I'm not using it, you have to wait for it to cycle on again. Oh, by the way, this controller, I wanted to mention that if you wanted an extra one of these, it's like $40, and I think that's way too high of a price for this thing. You're better off with getting another controller, like a Super Nintendo controller or a Nintendo controller or whatever. So let's... Oops, didn't want to do that. I accidentally powered off the controller I was using. That was smart. let's go back. Oops, now back too much. You can hear the clicky buttons. I mean, I used this thing at first for when I was testing it out. It's not too bad, but some games with this micro switch. I didn't want to do that. It makes like running and ducking and sliding in like Mario games very difficult to do. I found, because you don't know if you're hitting down exactly from forward. Yeah, hotkeys and. Auto load last state. I have that turned off. Theoretically, what you could do is when you stop the game, you could stop the game and then take it out, play something else, and when you put the game back in, leave off right when you left off, right off the bat. And I turned that off just because I like, to have the. I like to start the game again from the menu without being jarred right into some sequence. If I just pulled the game out before, Auto start is off. That way, when you plug a cartridge in, it'll just start the game. Now, I'd rather not do that. Yeah, it's all this other stuff. Oh, let me talk about the upgrade process. What was unusual about this is you have to, in order to update the system, you have to put an SD card in the system first. Write the firmware request to the SD card. Take the SD card out. Put it in your computer. Go online to Retron and Famicom's website and upload that file to their system, and then it gives you another file. And that file is specifically for your system, so you can't use that on another Retron 5, supposedly. At least that's what it said when I did the update process. And not only does the firmware get updated, I think this firmware and software, and I think the firmware has been updated twice, and the software has been updated 5 times in like the last 2 weeks. So, I'll explain what I think can be updated and what I don't think can be updated as I go through this. But yeah, that was kind of a weird thing. And there's also cheats that you can select. And the cheat file, you just go to their website, download the cheat file, put an SD card, and throw it in the back. Did not come with an SD card, but you don't really need a big SD card for this anyway. Alright, so let's plug in some games. And I'm going to start out with the Genesis, because I'm going to go from the back slot to the front slot, which is how I originally tested it out. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to plug in a Genesis controller. One player is on the left side. Control ports for first player on the left side, second player on the right side. So I'm going to just go straight with Sonic and Knuckles, because a lot of the videos I saw say, hey, Sonic and Knuckles works. Let me get back to the main screen here. Okay, so you plug it in, and it actually is going to download the ROM into the system. Now, some people have said, hey, it's only a partial ROM download, but no, I could prove that that is actually going into the system, and I could prove it with this game. So Sonic and Knuckles is in there. Let's hit play, and the game will start up. Let me lower the volume here, because you're going to hear it on the capture device anyway. So I have the scan lines on. If I turn the scan lines off, it looks like this. And this is with no filter. And I actually really like it with the scan lines on. But if we turn the scan lines off and we cycle through some of the filters, you can see, let me just go back to the main screen here. Let's hit start. Back to the title screen. And we can cycle through some of those filters really quick. You can see it on the same screen here. So this is nothing. Then we got 2x Sal, Super 2x SAL. I don't know if it's SAL or Super Eagle, Scale 2X, H2Q2. Let's hit start again. Just trying to cycle through on the same screen here. So, and then we, none, back to nothing. And I mean, for some games it looks okay, but when I got to, like, the Game Boy games, the Nintendo games, all of the filters looked horrible to me. And maybe I'll get back to that later. But let's turn the scan lines back on, because I like it on the TV where it looks with the scan lines. And it might actually look pretty good on the in the capture device with the scan lines on, too. So I think I'm going to leave it with the scan lines on, even with the, if you cycle through the filters again. Sonic, it doesn't look too bad going through some of these filters, but some games just look horrible. Okay, where am I here? None. Okay, we're back to none. Now leave the scan lines on. Next time I get to the menu, I'm going to program this to be a fast forward button. We're not going to cycle scan lines on or off again. But as you can see, we got Sonic and Knuckles working. Now, one of the complaints was that the lock-on technology doesn't work. But it does work. Now, it was updated. It was fixed. So let's go back home. Now what we have to do is return the main menu. What we have to do is unplug this. Now let's find my copy of Sonic 3. So we got Sonic 3. We're going to plug it in at the top here. And then plug that in here. Load up the cart. And Sonic and Knuckles. Hit start. It should have said Sonic and Knuckles was Sonic 3, so it might not be detecting the Sonic 3 card. So let's try it again. Alright, let's unplug it. Oh yes, the very first thing I want to mention, the death grip. Yes, a lot of people have complained that it is hard to get the cartridges in and out. I have no problem getting the cartridges in. Getting the cartridges out, it likes to just hold on to those. So let's try that again. We'll put that in there. I don't think I had the Sonic 3 cartridge in there all the way. Okay, this is not going good here. Try again. Okay, there we go. I don't know what the problem was. I guess my Sonic 3 cartridge might be a little bit dirty. But yes, as you can see, Sonic and Knuckles with Sonic the Hedgehog 3. So now we have Sonic 3 and Knuckles. So that works. We'll go back. And now now you'll see why I'm doing this in a while. Why I can't just take off Sonic 3 and plug in another game. So we'll take this game, plug in Sonic 2, pop that in, and yeah, it's taking a little bit longer to load because I think it's loading both ROMs. So there you go, Sonic and Knuckles, Sonic 2. Start that up, and my air conditioner's back on, so it might be you have a little bit of background noise. So yeah, now we'll see Sonic the Hedgehog 2, and then it says Knuckles in Sonic the Hedgehog 2. So that works just fine. In fact, you could play that. Now, I'm going to bring up a interesting point, where I said I could prove that it's actually loaded the entire ROM into the system. And the reason I can do that is because I could actually literally just take that cartridge out, and nothing has happened. It's playing it off the ROM. The reason you take it out is so it doesn't detect the cartridge anymore. So it can prepare itself to accept another cartridge in any form. There's reasons why I think they did that. If you're wondering why, if you're thinking why does it need to know what cartridge in there, it just downloads the ROM and plays the ROM. Well, not all game cartridges are created equally. Some of them have special chips in them. I'm sure you know that Star Fox has the Super FX chip, and I think it needs to detect what cartridge it is, so it can also emulate the Super FX chip, or also emulate the DSP-1 chip, or whatever special chips may be in the device. Like, for example, Sonic and Knuckles, it has to detect that it's Sonic and Knuckles, so it knows whether or not to there's going to be another cartridge on top of there it needs to download. So here's what's interesting now. If we take Sonic 3 and pop that back into the top and say reset, well, it's not re-downloading the ROM or anything. It's not going to do that until we take out the cartridge and put it in again. So even if we do that, it's still going to come off Sonic the Hedgehog 2, even though I reset it with Sonic 3 in there. So here's what's interesting. Another thing that's interesting. You may be saying, but wait, what about the lock-on with Sonic 1? Yes, that works too. So we have to actually unplug it and plug it back in. And I think it'll say Sonic and Knuckles with Sonic the Hedgehog. Yeah, Sonic and Knuckles, Sonic the Hedgehog. and you would get the no way message, which is actually you hit A, B, and C, and you get that weird bonus game, like you would normally get. So get the blue spheres. Now, you might be saying, well, Sonic and Knuckles, this game will work with any lock-on cartridge. Any cartridge. You can pop any Sega Genesis cartridge in there. And yeah, if we return back to the main menu, for example, and I spent some time just experimenting around with that without unplugging the Sonic and Knuckles cartridge and put in Sonic 3 and hit play again. Yeah, we're gonna still get the no way screen. So let's go back to the main menu. This is gonna be a long video, I think, because I'm still on Sega Genesis here. So if we take this out, let's take out Sonic and Knuckles, and let's plug in. Also, let's put in Alex the Kid on top of Sonic and Knuckles. See what happens. We're gonna get unknown cartridge. Let's, run it anyway, and we get the same no way message. Hit ABC, and there you go. You got your special stage. So it is downloading the ROM, the Sonic and Knuckles, and whatever cartridge ROM is attached, and you can still play all of the Blue Spheres games with whatever cartridge you want locked onto it. This one's kind of I was never really any good with this. That was a bad... Oh, okay, anyway. Let me pause for a second, I'll clean this all up. Actually, no, there's actually one more thing I wanted to show in the Genesis port. I don't have any Japanese Mega Drive games, but I do have a European Mega Drive game, so let's plug that in. Return to main menu, and I hit the wrong button. There we go. And just to prove that that works, I know GameSec had said that there were some games that don't fit in the slot, but I'm sure if you filed open the slot a little bit, it would work. But I do have one PAL Mega Drive game here. This is Psycho Pinball. Plug that in, and there it goes. For a second I was like, why isn't it detecting it? Psycho Pinball. So yeah, we could just, that works just fine. And yeah, I don't see, if it fits in that slot, it seems to work. Except, let me talk about the Game Genies. While I'm on this, and you have the Genesis Game Genie here, this doesn't work. I mean, it'll detect the Game Genie, but it won't play whatever game is on there. Whenever you hit start, it just resets the Game Genie. I think it's just because it's not programmed. I don't think it's able to... if you think about how it works, it basically, the Game Genie works by disrupting the code as it's passing through the Game Genie. But with the Retron 5, it's got to download everything first into the system, and it just might not be able to handle the way the Game Genie works. So that means this Game Genie, even though it'll detect it, it won't work. Super Nintendo Game Genie, for some reason it doesn't even detect it. Regular Nintendo Game Genie doesn't work at all. None of the Game Genies work. So I don't think that's that big of a deal. I mean, it'd be nice if it does work, but you can download cheats anyway. So I don't know, I didn't really get this to play, use my Game Genie anyway. So again, if you want to use it, you're better off with something else, like using the original system, I think. So let me pause, clean some of this up, and move on to the Super Nintendo slot. Alright, now since we want to play Super Nintendo games, I'm going to plug in the Super Nintendo controller. And I'm going to leave the Genesis controller plugged in because you can also play Super Nintendo games with the Genesis controller if you'd like. You could remap the buttons, you could do whatever you want. So if you like playing Street Fighter on the Super Nintendo, but you like the Genesis controller better, you could play Street Fighter with the Genesis controller. So let's pop in some stuff here. I got a bunch of games here. Let's pop in the first one. We got Super Mario Kart. I'm just gonna pop that in there and show that it works. And you know what? My scan lines are off, I think. No, they're on. Okay. I do like the scan lines, how they kind of react to the amount of brightness that is on the screen. It's a very nice touch. So if it's a pure white screen, you're going to see less of the scan lines, I think. Or I could be wrong. I don't know. It's a very subtle effect, I think. And, you know, I said I was going to change the macro button, and I didn't. Let me pause and do that really quick. All right. I've gone and changed the button to change this button to fast forward. So if we hit this button, it actually will fast forward through the ROM. So like if you're stuck in a cutscene or a title that you have to wait, you can hit this button and just fast forward through that. So that's a pretty interesting effect. So yeah, as you can see, your Mario Kart fast. Basically, Super Mario Kart works. Now, let's plug in. You might be wondering, hey, what about games with the Super FX chip? So let's use I'm going to put in the most popular game that uses Super FX chip. That's right, it's Stunt Race FX. And if you've see the screenshot in the corner, that was kind of like the last place it takes like an image shot of the last thing it saw on the screen and uses that for the next time you plug it in. So yeah, Stunt Race FX seemed to work. And you know what? I did play this once, and it did have a weird glitch. Let me see if I can see that again. Okay, there, that's the button. So my name's already in there. Rockfield. Yes, here it is. That was a weird glitch to happen. This is the only glitch I've seen like this so far. But once I get past that screen, it's not there anymore. I wonder, that's something that could be fixed, I guess, with an update. Yeah. You know, it just occurred to me I never brought up save states. I will get to save states when we get to the Game Boy games, because I did experiment with that. So yeah, Stunt Race FX works. Now, here's something that kind of blew me away. Let's go to the next game I'm going to show here. I was expecting this not to work, and it did work. So let's pull out Stunt Race FX. Here's a game that I didn't see anybody test, and you know, somebody might have tested it, might have missed their video. But Mario Paint. What about Mario Paint? What about the mouse? So you need the mouse, and if you could see, if you knew what I said, you could see where this is going. So I'm plugging the Super Nintendo controller. Oh wow! And I already got a knot in the mouse here. From like a day, less than a day. So we plug in the mouse, and guess what? I got the mouse pad here. Let me get the mouse pad. You can control the Retron 5 menu with a Super Nintendo mouse. It is supported. So we can hit play. I clicked on play, and it totally works with the mouse. So yeah, Mario Paint seems to be fully compatible with the Retron 5, including the... No, I just knocked over a stack of games I had. So the mouse totally works, which kind of surprised me because I was not expecting it to work. So you could play what's important on Mario Paint, and that is the fly swatting game. Let's exit. I just wanted to show that worked. But unfortunately, I tried... I thought it would be awesome. Hey, I thought Super Nintendo mouse works. What about the Genesis mouse? Plug that in. That did not work. But again, seems like the Retron 5 can be able to detect, would be able to detect different types of controllers if they program it to. So, I mean, who knows? Maybe in a further update, I can play Mario Paint with the Genesis mouse. If they put in a feature where you're able to do that. Now, light guns. Okay, I'm going to get into something here since I've actually let me put in the next game. I wanted to show. I have a couple Super Famicom games, so let's put in a Super Famicom game, and I'll leave that run while I get to the next point I wanted to bring up, and that is light gun games. I know in particular Pat the NES Punk was disappointed that it did not play. And it even detects this Famicom game called Super Famicom from TV Animation Slam Dunk Yonkyu Getsututsu. I guess that's what it's called. So let me just throw that on there. And he was kind of disappointed that, hey, it's not 100% compatible because it doesn't work with light gun games. And I never actually tried myself to put in a light gun. I don't know if it would detect it. I assume it would not detect it because HD TVs don't detect the light guns to begin with. Now, I guess there's the point there are very few CRT TVs out there that could accept HDMI. And I think they're just too few to want to be able to support that. Does this seem weird to me? Oh, because I somehow put filter on there. Back to no filter. Okay, that's the way it should look. I must have hit the button without looking. So if we fast forward, we could fast forward to a demo, I suppose, if it does show one. There we go. Anyway, yeah, and I gotta say, the reason for buying this is to hook it up to an HD TV. If you want to play these games on a CRT TV, there's no reason to have this. Use the original systems. While I'm on that point too, so the people that say, hey, will EverDrive carts work on this? I want to use my EverDrive cart. Well, look what we just saw with Sonic and Knuckles, where it can't really, and the Game Genies, it won't work with EverDrive carts because it has to download the ROM into the system. And with those flash carts, it really just brings up a menu from what I've seen to select what ROM you want. And so when you plug the cartridge into the Retron 5, it doesn't know. It doesn't see those ROMs. So unless they program it in there that, hey, I detect an EverDrive cart, it's not going to let you do that. So that's why I think EverDrive carts won't work, is because when you plug in the game, the Retron 5 has to know what kind of game it is, so it knows how to emulate it. And if it doesn't know how to emulate it, it'll give you a warning, but it might not work. And you know what, from what I read, EverDrive carts won't work 100% with every game anyway. Take, for example, if you have the Super NES EverDrive cart and you want to run Star Fox on it, Star Fox might not work because Star Fox requires the FX chip. And unless your EverDrive has an FX chip, it won't work. So, there's that. I think that if you're... I was going to save this to the beginning or the end, and I'm not going to say it either, but I think if you want a device that plays ROMs, you're better off with something else, like hooking a PC up to your TV, or hooking a PC up, or using an Ouya. An Ouya, I heard, was excellent for those type of games. So this is not for you if you want to play ROMs. This is for if you want to play your existing game collection on an HD TV, period. I think that's the market for this. If you're wondering, hey, can I play ROMs on it, then this isn't the device for you. So, yeah, as you can see, Super Famicom game works. I'm going to plug in one more Super Famicom game. Return the menu. And this is exactly what I wanted the device for. I wanted to play my game cartridges on my HD TV. Now, is it kind of silly that it's just downloading the ROM and emulating it? Now, I know that this cartridge is dirty. If the cartridge is dirty, it'll say unknown cart, but I know it should detect this game. And why is it not detecting the cart at all? There we go. Yeah, Super Genjin 2. It was a bit dirty, and I just cleaned it off barely enough for it to work the other day, but it works. So PC Genjin 2 detects it totally. So is there any reason to continue on with the Super Nintendo port? No. Let me clean some stuff up and go on to the next. Oh, I totally forgot. I had this out. I knew I would remember. Super Game Boy does not work. Again, for the same reason I talked about for the Game Gear. Not the Game Gear. The Game Genie won't work. It can detect the Super Game Boy, but I guess it doesn't know what's in the... doesn't think about looking for the cartridges in the top port. And I guess it could, because they got Sonic and Knuckles to work. I guess they could program this and say, hey, Super Game Boy, let's download whatever's in here. There might be some issues with that. I don't know. Maybe they're working to iron it out. That'll be updated in the future update. but I think that this is irrelevant anyway, since you can play Game Boy games anyway in the front loader, which is probably why it's not a high priority to fix. I don't really care because I don't need this. I could plug it in the front. There may be some features on this that I'm not really aware of that some people are missing, but I'll explain when we get to the front port. I'll explain why I think this is kind of irrelevant. But as for that, I'm going to put this stuff away and we'll move on to the NES port. Alright, since we're moving on to the NES port, I think it's only appropriate we plug in the NES controller. And again, like any of the other controllers, you could use this NES controller to control any of the games. You could, if you wanted to, use it to control Super Nintendo games, although you'd be missing some of the buttons. You could play Genesis games, again, missing some of the buttons, or you could use the Super Nintendo controller to play NES games. I don't know, it's all up to you. But this is how I had it hooked up before with all these controllers, and that's why I didn't have it all hooked up to begin with, just because with everything plugged in, you got all these wires coming off to the side and everything. But let's pop in one of my favorite NES games, maybe even my favorite NES game, Battletoads. I would say it's my favorite. Now, off chance, you know what? I totally forgot to mention Sega Master System power base converter. Yes, it does work from the videos I've seen. It works 100% from the videos I've seen. Fortunately, I sold mine last year. If I knew that this supported it, I wouldn't have sold it. My mind, I was thinking, hey, I've got a Sega Master System. What do I need the power base converter for? Well, this was my answer. So I am on the lookout for a power base converter. Again, a friend on Facebook had pointed out, hey, they have a Genesis Master System converter. The only different problem is that you can't use cards on it. It's just like a cartridge pass-through thing. He tested it out, said it works. Said it worked with Mark III games too. So the Retron 5 can actually play Sega Mark III games as well. So I might get that. Right now it's a little bit cheaper from what I see the power base converter going for. But I'm going to still try and go for a power base converter if I can find one for a decent price. Somebody I saw in one of the comments of one of the videos saying, hey, does Battletoads make it past level 2? And yeah, I actually made it to level 3, the speeder bike level. My favorite level in the whole game. I really do like that level. I'm no good at it anymore. I need practice to go through it. In fact, I better not... Oh, shoot, look at this. I'm starting to play Battletoads, which is never a good sign because I can never stop once I start. But, man, this is my favorite NES title. And it looks so good on the Retron 5 as well. Especially without any of these filters. So, actually, you know what we could do? We could pause the game here and cycle through the filters here to see what they look like. Now again, I have the scan lines on. I have no way of turning these. Well, I can turn off the scan lines. If I hit down and start, we can turn the scan lines off. And return to game. Oops. And now we can, let's pause it with his eyes on. Now we can cycle through some of the... So again, like I said, I think the NES games look worse with the filters on. And there's my air conditioner again. So you can see, it just makes everything look blurry to me. That's not too bad, but again, I prefer the original. LQ2X and then HQ, whatever these are. It's nice that those filters are there, but I don't think I'm going to use them. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn the scan lines back on and just cycle through them again. I keep hitting home like it's going to... Oh, yeah, speaking of which, there's no button on this Hyperkin controller that will say turn on if the system's off. I honestly don't think that's that big of a deal. It's not like a PS3, PS4, Xbox 360 where you're not going to have to put a game in the system, as it were, and the controllers are wireless. I'm going to be using the wired controllers for the most part. I'm going to be switching games for the most part. I'm going to have the system by me. So, yeah, we're looking at the filters with the scan lines on. And they don't look that bad either, I don't think. But still, I like the original. I like that that look. It looks weird to me otherwise. There's just something with the filters on. They look okay, and then I look at them, I'm like, it looks kind of goofy, and I always wind up turning it off. So since I have the game paused, let's not play this anymore. So, return to main menu. Now I have one more NES game to show. And the reason I'm going to show this is because Pat the NES punk said it didn't work. He said Arkanoid did not work. The game was all glitchy. But you know what? I plugged it in. And now the game cartridge worked fine. No problems at all. Looks really good. Nothing glitching out. Unfortunately, he was correct in that this Voss controller doesn't work. It doesn't detect it at all. But again, as we've seen that the Super Nintendo mouse works, this is something that could be supported in the future. I hope it is, because I really like Arkanoid and I really like the Voss controller. Not quite the same game playing it with the NES controller. So that's all I wanted to show with that. Arkanoid does work. Moving on, let's put that back. We got some Famicom games, and I'm going to kind of show some interesting stuff. So, firstly, Devil World. Just going to pop that in really quick. Error, really, that means that I did something wrong there. Error failed to dump ROM. That's interesting, because this game should work. I've seen it work. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to clean this cartridge. Oh, jeez. I just cleaned that cartridge, and it was like the Q-tip was pure black. So, let's see. Here we go. Nope, still. Do I have to clean it again? No, it worked. Unknown cartridge. Yeah, it's still a little bit dirty. Let's see if we can get it to work here. Devil World. So, yes, Devil World does work. The unknown cartridge thing that failed to dump ROM, that just means your cartridge is dirty, I think. But yeah, Devil World works. Now, let's do one more. Oops, hit the wrong button there. Oops. Come on, come on. Here we go. I wish there was like a better way to exit the game than to go like that. They should move the menu around a little bit so it's a little bit faster to exit the game, I think. I don't know. So let's do that one. This is Family Pinball, which is the Japanese version of Rockin' Ball. The reason I had to get this is because I don't know if I did I think I might have done a Crow Plays on this. Maybe, I don't know, but in the American version they pulled out, this wasn't released by Namco, so they pulled out all the Pac-Man references. So then we actually have a Pac-Man pinball in here. So yeah, there we go. Now, here's the interesting thing I wanted to show, and Sinister Moon did show this off. He was the only person that showed this. And I was kind of interested that out of the 5 people I watched, he was the only person that did this. But I'm going to take it a step further. We have my Nintendo Famicom adapter, so this is how we want to plug it in, like that. This is the back. And then plug that in the NES port. And comes up Family Pinball. In fact, it texts it exactly the same way. And we can play. Now, let's go back to the main menu. And this is exactly how I could prove, again, like I did with Sonic and Knuckles, that it's just loading off the ROM, and it's not going to reset unless you pull the game cartridge out. Is that I'm going to leave the cartridge in there, pull out this cartridge, put that off to the side, play the game. Yeah, it didn't detect that the cartridge is pulled out, so even though I have no game cartridge plugged in there, it's still playing this. In fact, I could take this Devil World, plug it in opposite side there, it doesn't care. Let's go back to the main menu. Even if I hit reset, what it's doing is just resetting the ROM. Even if I went all the way back out and hit play again, it still thinks it's Rocket Ball. What I actually have to do, return to main menu, actually have to pull out the entire cartridge all together and plug it back in, and then it's Devil World. So yeah, that's kind of the weird stuff that I'm experimenting with, and it kind of opens up the door as to why certain things don't work, like lock-on cartridges, unless it has to be programmed in specifically. So maybe Super Game Boy will be supported in the future, but it has to be all plugged in at once right at the beginning. Otherwise, it's not going to work. Because once that ROM is in there, it's not going to change unless it detects that the cartridge has been pulled out and another one has been put in. That's also why I think you can't plug in multiple carts at once. It gives you an error. Because if there's multiple carts in there, it only has, I guess one spot for whatever game is plugged in. If there's more than one game plugged in, it doesn't know which one to download. And I think that's why you get the error. Because I think they're talking about in the future having some kind of update where you could select which port you want to use. And I could see that working, but for right now it doesn't. So one cartridge at a time for right now. So we've taken care of everything on top. We're going to look at the Game Boy port next. So I'm going to just kind of jump cut to that. Alright, we're into the final stretch of the stuff I want to test out and show. And we're going to start with the Game Boy port. We're just going to start with normal Game Boy games. I'm going to plug in Super RC Pro M. There we go. I haven't tested this one out yet. Play just a normal Game Boy game. Now, see, the only downside with this not having the Super Game Boy player for the Super Nintendo is I don't think you can get the palette swaps like you did with that. That's a downside. But I think I prefer it in the normal black and white anyway. That's just my preference. Even with those palette swaps, I never changed the palette swap. So yeah, this looks fine. Maybe this is one that can benefit from some filters. I don't know. To me, it just doesn't look. That doesn't look too bad, I suppose. That doesn't look that bad. So maybe the Game Boy does. Maybe some of the games do benefit from this. Ooh, it looks like it's kind of glitching out there. I don't know if that's I don't know if that was the way. Maybe it's just not working. Maybe it's just with the filter. I don't know. Let's see. No effects. No, it's still happening there. So that's kind of weird. I think I do prefer it with. I don't know. Let's see. I wonder if we could scale down the image. I wonder what that looks like if I could down to start and. Oh, I can't do that from this screen. Anyway, I don't. Yeah, we can scale it down. It'll look better, smaller. But let's take that out. Pop in this other game I have here. Oh, Castlevania Adventure. So let's hit that up, play that up. Fast forward. Just fast forwarding through it. So even if hit start, come on, hit start, go. I'm going to play it with one hand. Yeah, this game kind of moved really slow, but it doesn't look too bad. Hit pause and kind of cycle through those filters again. Because they're interesting to see what kind of effects they do. I mean, that doesn't look too bad. I mean, maybe some of these games don't look too bad with these filters on there, but again, I like having the filters mapped to that button. You can just cycle through for whatever game. Because, no two games are going to appear the same with the filters. I mean, one game might look better with another filter, another game might look better with another filter. Or you could just play it pure like this and look at it and it's all its pixelated glory. So let's return to main menu. So those were two normal Game Boy games. But then we have the Game Boy games that support the Game Boy player, like Donkey Kong. So if we plug that in, unknown cartridge, which means it didn't go in there right. Donkey Kong. Guess what? This plays like it was in the Super Game Boy, with the color screen and everything. So I think that the Retron 5 has built-in Super Game Boy support. So you get the colors as if you were playing it on the Super Game Boy, as long as it has that image that it was supported on the Super Game Boy. That is the reason I think why the Super Game Boy is kind of irrelevant. You've already got the same functionality built into the system somewhat. Now you're not going to get the borders, which was another cool thing I think. So, I mean, that's a downside, but again, if you want to blow it up to a full-size screen anyway, you're not going to want the border anyway. So, there's that. So that might be one of the reasons, one way to look at it. Again, it'd be nice if the Super Game Boy was compatible, but it's really not necessary. It's one of the least necessary things, I think, on the system. One more Super Game Boy game I have here, and that is Space Invaders. Works with the Super Game Boy, and this is how you can almost prove that it works with the Super Game Boy, because the game acts totally differently when you boot it up when it's in the Super Game Boy. Because when you do, it asks you, come on, ask me. There we go. If you want to play the arcade version, or the Super Game Boy version. So if I select Super Game Boy, it's automatically in color, I think. Oh well. I guess you have to start. So let's hit start here. Oh wait, arcade Space Invaders are now invading your Super NES. Please wait. I don't know what that means. Oh, you know what? I think that this is... that's interesting. I forgot all about this. Yeah, the game does act completely differently. I guess both options were Super Nintendo. But since this is actually a real Super Nintendo, it's not working properly. But if we reset... Ooh, I did something weird there. I think it totally screwed it up. Let's play again. And not select that option. Yeah, it was trying to download something to some memory on the Super Nintendo. But since this isn't a Super Nintendo, it didn't quite work. So if we choose like Super Game Boy, this I think is the game if it was plugged into a Super... Oh, again I have to start. Game if it was plugged into a Super Game Boy. Full color and everything. So again, we can play black and white or color. So yeah, it looks really good. If I pause, let's look at the filters of this. Something simple like this. Wow, that does not look good at all. Again, horrible. Really bad. That's not too bad, but still, I think the original is better. And again, that's kind of bad, and that's bad. Yeah, you gotta play with the original on this. There's no filter that makes this look good. So, that's it for Game Boy games. Let's move on to some Game Boy Color stuff here. Oh, here. Let's start out with some... Actually, I'm going to show off Legend of Zelda Link's Awakening. Now, this is the game I kind of experimented with the save state. How did I do this? I did it without... Okay, actually, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to pause. I'm actually going to get a Game Boy. Let's get this game out. Let's actually... you know, I have the save state in there, and I can prove that this works. Let me return to main menu. I'm going to get Game Boy, and I'll show. Alright, so I have it here on a Game Boy SP. So what I want to show here is that we have a game save in there. There's really no progress on it. But I'm going to erase it. So there's no data in here. Oops. So if we turn it off and on again, let's just go back in there and see that there's nothing in there. There's no game save in there. So there's no game save in here, but there's already a game save in the Retron 5, because when I first plugged it in, it downloaded it. So let's play. And see, here's the game save from before. So it's like what we're going to do is actually go back to the main menu of the Retron 5. Game menu, and we can copy the save to the card. So I'm going to do that. And now this was the thing that people were saying was erasing game saves and everything. So the game save is now back on the cart. So if we take this and plug it back in to the Game Boy SP, the game save should be back. Now, this was actually one of the things they addressed in one of the updates in the last 6 weeks, apparently. So there's the game save. It's back. So what this potentially, what the Retron 5 could potentially be done to used to do, is if you want to change the battery in a cartridge for the backup, but if you remove the battery, you're going to lose the game saves. So what you could actually do is plug the cart in the Retron 5, download the game save, you know, replace the battery, and then plug it back in and upload the game save back, and you don't lose any data. So there's one real advantage to the Retron 5 that you really can't do with anything else. I mean, I think you could do it. There's a memory thing for the, you know, the Super Nintendo and that kind of stuff. But again, you got an all-in-one device right now that'll do that. So let's plug in something else. We got Wario Land 3 here. What I've noticed is that the Game Boy Color and Game Boy Advance games seem to, especially Game Boy Advance games, take a really long time to update. So there's the title for Wario Land 3. So again, you know, you could cycle through the filters. Some of them look good, some of them look bad. But I like just keeping it original. Again, this is another one with a game save that got downloaded in there. And I could do the same thing, but I'm not. I already proved it with the Zelda that it works. Now, I guess there's a potential that it might not still work for some games. But, I don't know. It seems to work. Again, I'm not going to go through and do it for every game. It just worked once. So, yeah. Well, let's cycle through here. Let's see what... Again, I like the scan lanes on, so I'm leaving the scan lanes on. Again, some of these filters don't look too bad. I do like the original look, though. Let's go get out of here. Got another game to try out here. We got, actually we have, you know what, I'm not going to plug this in, but I'm going to show off this one. Top Gear Pocket. The Rumble doesn't work. I know I don't have a battery in there right now, but I know the battery, the Rumble won't work. And I'll explain why. Here's Kirby Tilt and Tumble. I'm going to plug that in. And it failed to dump around. You know what? I was getting that, and I think it just did it because it didn't work. I think now that the cartridge needs to be cleaned. Let me try that really quick. Alright, let's plug that in. It failed to dump around. I'm pretty sure this game works. Let me just make sure it'll run on a regular Game Boy here. Okay, so that might be why. Okay, yeah, I think GameSack said that this game didn't work, and I just always get a ROM dump error or whatever. But even if the game did work, even if it didn't load up, you would not be able to play this game. And the reason is it needs the tilt function that's built into the cartridge. And as I have explained with the Retron 5, it's actually dumping the ROM. It has no tilt function in the ROM. That might be why it can't dump it. It's because maybe there's something that says, hey, there's tilt function in here. And when the Retron 5 dumps that ROM, it doesn't know what to do with it. So, yeah, even if it did get in there and you started up the game, you wouldn't be able to play it because the tilt is actually in the cartridge and it's not using the cartridge at all. So, that's it for Game Boy Color. Let's move on to Game Boy Advance. There's two more games on the show here. Actually, I haven't tried this one. Mario vs. Donkey Kong. I just want to see how that looks really quick. So you pop that in there. And as you can see, wow, Game Boy Advance games usually take a long time to import into the system. And I think it might be because of the way the ROM is compressed in the cartridge. And not only does it have to download it, but it has to uncompress it as well. It's just my guess. Don't take that. Everything I've said is just my guess. Don't take my word for it. But this, I guess it's my theory. I mean, I didn't design this or anything. I do like the flashing lights in the front when it's doing that. Okay, now it's importing the save. It does that always. So we have the initial import save from the cartridge. You know what? This could be another one we test with the Game Boy Advance since I have that out. So hit play. Nintendo Technology Corporation. So everything is kind of blurry because let's try some filters on this. That doesn't look too bad, actually. So yeah, I like none still. I might try and play with some filters on some of these games. So I did do a Crow Plays on this at some point, and that's probably what my save file's from. So here's my save file. And now it's in the system. It's actually using the save file in the system. Let's return to the main menu. What I'm going to do is I'm going to pop this game cartridge in to the Game Boy Advance here. You might as well test out more than one. More than one cartridge with the game save swap. So let's erase data. Erase, yes. So now that data's not there anymore. So let's plug the game cartridge back in there, and I'll cut to where it's actually loaded since this took a long time to download the ROM. Alright, we got it loaded in, and actually if we play it, that game save is still going to be in the system because it's using the game save that's in the system. Once it downloads it in there once, it's not going to download it again unless you tell it to. So there's the game save. So let's get out of there. return to the main menu, and we're going to copy the save back to the cart. Wow, that's taking quite some time to do. Alright, so the save is back in the cart. We're going to take the cart out, plug it back in the Game Boy here. And let's see. Let's start it up here. Come on, let's get in there. And there's the save. It's back, so that seemed to work just fine. So no problems there. So just one more game I'm going to show, and that is WarioWare Twisted. Again, this is going to take quite a bit of time to load up, so I'm going to cut to where it's done loading. Okay, as you can see, we've loaded WarioWare Twisted. Let's play. And I hit the wrong button again. Play. I always want to hit start when it doesn't let me to, and start when it doesn't want me to. So, here's, if you can guess, this game is not going to work. It's going to play, but it's not going to work. And why is that not going to work? Because the cartridge has a built-in tilt controller. And as you can see, I'm tilting, but it's not going to work. Well, actually, we have to hit start. So let's hit start, and the main menu story, we can't tilt it. It's not going to select any options. You usually tilt the controller to select an option in this game. And again, it's because it's dumped the ROM into the cartridge. It's not using the cartridge at all. And that is where the tilt sensor is. So yeah, again, this game's not going to work. I don't think it will ever work. Unless they figure out some way that says, hey, this is WarioWare Twisted. And again, I don't think they're going to do it because I don't think they really would want you twisting the Retron 5 with all the cables and stuff. It's not really meant for that. I never did try this game in the GameCube Game Boy adapter. I'm going to have to do that one day. I might have to try that out. But there's a lot of cables coming out of that system. Anyway, that's everything I wanted to show with the system. Again, let me reiterate. This is for somebody who already has a game collection, I believe. Or, if you have this is for somebody who already has a game collection. And they want to play those games on HD TV sometimes, instead of having to pull out a CRT TV or go to where a CRT TV is. Because I think if you have a game collection, you need a CRT TV to play these games and not have it look like total crap on an HD TV. Hence, enter the Retron 5 that gives you that option. Now, if you just want to play ROMs, this is not the thing for you. Even though this technically does play ROMs, it plays it off of the cartridges you already have. As like a stopgap. I don't know if there's some kind of legal issue with it just being a ROM machine or something. I mean, you have the Ouya or a PC, and I think those get around it by also being another device playing original games, and those are just a function of those devices. And maybe Nintendo, Sega, whatever, look the other way at those devices. But I think if this were to just play ROMs and do nothing else, there'd be an issue. And why is that? Well, look at the Nintendo eShop. Look at all the games they're trying to download, sell to you, download. And they're just ROMs. It's just emulation. It's the same thing. But Nintendo technically has the rights to that. So I think if, they're okay maybe with you already owning the game and just an alternate way to play it. Whereas if it's just a ROM, you could go online and torrent a whole, I don't know how big. I think all the Super Nintendo games, couple hundred megs. All the NES games, I don't even think that's 100 megs. It takes no time at all to download. And you can just play it on any device that plays ROM. So this is a little bit different in that respect. I just don't think, this thing could get hacked. It might be some trouble to hack to play some ROMs, seeing as how the way you update the device, where you have to have your own save file and then have it patched through their website. So I guess that's like an added hurdle. Maybe there's a way around it. I don't know. I'm not a hacker or nothing. I don't hack these devices. But I did get this device just to play these games on HD TV, and that's exactly what it does. So I'm happy with it. If that's what you want it to do, go for it. $139, not too shabby. if you think about it, the cost, what they're asking for the controller is $40 alone, and that comes with it. I think that might be the reason why they bumped up the price, actually, because of the how expensive the controller is. Maybe they could offer a controllerless option. No, I don't think that's a good idea. You kind of do want the controller just for the extra buttons, I think. Sometimes if you want to play wirelessly, this is not bad for certain games. But for certain games, like Mario, all the Mario games, I cannot play this with the Mario games. Sonic games, I can't play it with. But for some of their games, like shooters and stuff, it's not too bad. I'm happy I got it. I got a little spot in the corner there. Let's see if I can... right next to the Xbox down there, I got a little hole dug out for it to reside when I'm not... when I'm not playing it. And I'm gonna like unhook it too. I have... Let me pop this up here. See how I hooked up? I have this on the tripod, so it might be goofy. But I do have like a HDMI extender device there that's plugged into the Switch. It's just on Switch 8, so you could plug it in there, and I could just plug it into this. I usually have these extension cords just sitting right there on the floor for systems and whatnot. So you know that's how I'm gonna deal with this. Whenever I want to plug it in, I just have to plug in the power and the HDMI, and I'm good to go. So yeah. I'm pretty happy with this. Again, if you want to play, I can't reiterate this enough. If you just want to play ROMs, this is not the device for you. But if you want to play your existing game collection on an HD TV and have it look good, this is an option for you. So, I don't know how long this video is going to be when I edit it down, but it's going to be fairly long regardless. I've been filming for over an hour straight. I know a lot of that's going to be cut out. Maybe not a lot of it, but whatever. Anyway, let's stop rambling on and say thanks everyone for watching. See you all next time. Bye.